creativity in your opinion? Is this a purely human? Operation? Is creativity purely human?
Look, smarter people than me have been unable to figure out what creativity really is. I've heard a lot of interesting theories about it. Um, but I believe creativity is 100% human, yes. And I think that we're obviously going to get into this as we discuss AI's sort of effect on the creative industries. But I think we're already seeing that AI is very good at recycling what's already been done by humans and putting it together maybe in new combinations, but I'm not sure that's what creativity is. So not a great definition for you.
Well, let me ask you. I mean, you're
Yeah.
creative. You've been doing that. You've been working in creativity for your entire life. If you were a creative right now, finishing school, finishing graduate school, would you be optimistic about the future?
I'd be scared shitless about the future if I were young right now. I mean, it's just a terrible moment. But one of the things I want to talk to you about is my belief that this does not have to be a terrible moment. That um, there's this strange passivity that has taken over our whole culture and the leaders of our culture, and this assumption that AI is unstoppable in its economic and creative onslaught. And I think that's absolutely wrong. I think we're actually at a different kind of inflection point right now where it's going to be necessary for people like you and me and millions of other people around the country to say, you know what? I don't want this shit. This is not what I want. I mean, there are uses for AI that are brilliant, okay? But that's not the business model of the people creating AI. Their business model is to destroy human labor, destroy human work, destroy human value. And I think we're going to have to stand up against that. And I'm happy to talk about it more, and happy to talk about it, how it will affect the creative industries as well.
And that's really what I want to get to, because there's been a lot of controversy, particularly creative. There's always obviously been friction between, let's say, creative workers and management, let's say, broadly speaking, right? But a lot of this kind of came to a head fairly recently with AI. Can you just help, because maybe the audience doesn't know much about why this is controversial. Can you maybe help spell this out to the audience of why this is truly an inflection point?
Well, first of all, there are different pieces of this that brought us to this point where we are, and I think it might be worth spending a minute or two to talk about how the creative industries have changed in the last 20 years because of the nature of the corporations that have taken them over. Okay, I don't work in the same business that I worked in 20 years ago. That's very, very important to understand, that much damage has been done already by the fact that these tech companies, have completely turned around the model of how the entertainment business works. And it's changed life for people like me and younger people as well. And what it's done is very similar to what it's done across sort of the economy in America. Basically, all of the money and the power goes to the people at the top, and the people who do the actual work have very little to say about what's going to happen and make a lot less than they used to. And it's funny because we always used to say that Hollywood was the goose that laid the golden egg. For 100 years, everybody in Hollywood did well. It didn't matter if you were the person who ran the craft service cart that gave out snacks on the set, or you were the top star, or you ran a studio. Everybody did well in Hollywood. And that's not true anymore.
How does
Because
it affect creativity, though? I mean, specifically, like, you're an executive, Marshall. Like, if you can spell out, how does it change for someone like you? You said this industry is not the same as it was 20 years ago. What does that mean?
Okay, what it means is that decisions are made now in a different way than they were made before. Decisions are made now based on algorithms, and if not algorithms, committees, teams, because that's how the tech business works. But in the day when I was young and even middle aged, decisions were made by singular people, by a person who ran a studio, who was often, by the way, a shithead or an asshole,
Mhm.
but who loved movies and who loved showmanship and made decisions based on their gut, based on their reading of what the public wanted. And their career lived or died based on how accurate that gut was. But they bet on themselves and their own decision making abilities. Okay. And what came out of that was a lot of crappy stuff and a lot of really brilliant stuff. And these people who ran studios had great respect for filmmakers. They loved filmmakers. And, if Coppola wanted to make a film, you know, they would listen. And I could, list 20 other, 30 other directors who would just be trusted based on the fact that the person who ran the studio said, look, this is a person who's brilliant, who's going to make something good, and we should go with that person's judgment. That never happens today. Maybe there may be 5 directors in the entire business who get to do what they want, and everybody else has to submit to the algorithms and the committees. So the entire way in which so-called creativity is enacted is different in the entertainment business today.
And how would you, in college we learn about there's commerce and there's entertainment, right?
Mhm.
And there
Yeah.
could be a delta in between them, right? A big
Yes.
difference.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
let's just say in general it was somewhere
Yeah.
in the middle. Let's say
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah.
Where are we now? Are we more towards entertainment? Is this just pure? Let's just
Well.
see how much money we can make for the cheapest we can build it now,
Uh huh.
or is that really where we're at now?
Well, I would say there's art and there's commerce. I mean,
Yeah,
entertainment is sort of what
the in
people
between.
want to
I
call
know.
it. Right? I would say in the past, there was a rough parity between art and commerce. Or put it this way, every studio made a certain number of films each year that they believed were art and a certain number of films they believed were commerce. And they hoped that the commerce movies would pay for the art movies.
Right.
Now they're just not in that business anymore. And there are a lot of reasons for that. And we don't need to go into it. It's been going on for 30 or 40 years, that slow descent. Okay. But I would say now it's 20% art and 80% commerce, and getting worse. And what's also happening is now you have a whole bunch of executives who really don't know anything. They don't know the history of movies. They don't know what worked in the past. They don't, there's just been a kind of degradation of the understanding of what movies and television can do or have done in the past. But again, there's great work being done. I'm not saying there isn't great work being done, but there's a lot of crappy work too.
Marshall, have you seen this this sort of, you said it's been 30, 40 years. There are a lot of things that have been 30 or 40 years, right?
Yeah,
That are kind of related to what we're discussing. Have you seen
you
this
bet.
right? I mean, have you seen this degradation in quality across other areas, right? That not
Well,
just commerce, right? But also the sort of what's parallel to that, right? In
okay,
art, right?
Brian, people who know me know that, you know, in my view, the devil in this world is the philosophy of neoliberalism.
Mhm.
And for those who don't know the meaning of the word, it's very simple. Okay. It was defined by Milton Friedman, the Pulitzer Prize winning economist back in the 70s, who said that the only responsibility a corporation has to society is to make a profit for its shareholders. That is essentially what neoliberalism means. It has nothing to do with the word liberal as we understand it today. Okay. And by the way, I'm not saying that that's evil or inherently wrong, but I think what the people who promulgated neoliberalism back in the 70s and 80s, and it really happened under Reagan's administration starting in 1981, they did not factor in what would happen over time as you took away the constraints of of business decisions and made them only about profit, as opposed to having to account for some aspect of the public good or the common good. Okay. And believe it or not, capitalism in the 50s and 60s did in some way take into account the common good. And over time, what you have now is two generations of executives who've grown up, who don't know anything, never think about the public good at all. They just think about what's going to make a profit next quarter. Okay. And the result of that is, okay, in certain markets, you have 45% of houses being bought by BlackRock and these other companies in order to jack up the price. You have the commoditization of medicine. I mean, across the board, neoliberalism, by the way, it has destroyed the value of workers because they believe what you should do is get rid of as many workers as you want and pay them as little as possible, which is not what capitalism was about in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, where it was about creating employment. Now they want to reduce employment. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So I think we had an understanding of capitalism in the post-World War II era that was destroyed by neoliberalism. And the result of that now is that basically these large corporations essentially own the government because it's their money that gets these people elected. So they write our laws, they write the regulations that they're going to live under. And that leads directly into AI. So yes, this is across the board, basically. They don't care what destruction they do because it's not part of the way they look at the world.